All right, so let's chat a little bit about wordiness and redundancy, which a lot of writers, of course, struggle with because it's hard. There's a couple different things that we'll go through here, and then of course you'll practice. So at the top, it says avoid wordiness and redundancy by taking out unnecessary words or phrases, or by taking out any words or phrases that repeat themselves. You could also avoid wordiness by eliminating unnecessarily helping verbs like am, is, are, were, was, and using active rather than passive voice. So from the very first lesson, when we talked about active verbs, this is key as we have learned. So one of the first things you could do is eliminate all those unnecessary words. I think students really struggle with this because you have been taught that we have to write in a certain way that like creates this like big flowy type writing, which we of course know is not necessarily good writing. So instead of saying something like, in spite of the fact that I like you, at this particular point in time, I will not be investing. You could just say, although I like you, I won't be investing right now. Right? So we take this like, I will not be, all of here to I won't be. We don't need this like constant phrasing. You can also trim it is or there are from virtually any sentence. This is a really good trick. So you might want to highlight that for yourself. So instead of saying there are 3 rivers that run through this country, 3 rivers run through this country. See that, and we've talked about eliminating that from our sentences before, but this is really where I would call revising and editing, where students oftentimes, I think, just like run, right, grammar and spell check, but looking for this wordiness is especially helpful. We could change, it is the satisfaction of completing a project that makes construction work rewarding, to the satisfaction of completing a project makes construction work rewarding. Notice how we took out the is, right? Taking out those to be verbs, is, are, were, what, had, and putting in an active verb that makes. We also want to eliminate redundant expressions. Joe's going to fix the broken heater, which is not working. Joe is going to fix the broken heater. Like by default, when something is broken, it is not working. So we don't need to say both. The Lions lost 6 consecutive games in a row, right? Consecutive means in a row, so we don't need both. So the Lions lost 6 consecutive games. Avoid using helping forms of to be, again, the weak verbs, am, is, are, was, were, whenever possible. Your locus, I don't really know, is serving as a foil for Odysseus. I haven't read Odysseus in a long time, right? Instead of the is serving, and we've talked about this before, we change it to serves, the strong verb, right? Eliminating the is. And then so many students write in what is called passive voice. If you are wordy and redundantly writing, you are typically writing in passive voice. So instead of saying America was discovered by Christopher Columbus, which we all know isn't true to begin with, we could lie and say Christopher Columbus discovered America. America didn't need to be discovered. There were people here before Columbus came. Wordy passive voice, Hester is forced to look inward and to question the central tenets of Puritanism by her isolation. Hester's isolation forces, right, strong verb, her to look inward and question the central tenets of Puritanism. When I see students do this, however, you often leave this out. You leave the by out and it's like implied. So your sentence might just read, Hester is forced to look inward and to question the central tenets of Puritanism. And you leave out the by, but it's still confusing on who's doing what. And so know that about your writing. If you have sentences like that, you might be leaving out the by, but it still can be passive if you don't have the person who's doing the action. So how could we make these wordy sentences more concise? There are a great deal of people at this particular time in history who avoid making any statement that might be considered controversial. Whew. Right. We could definitely take this like at this particular time in history out. Avoid making any statements, any controversial statements, period, right? Just moving some words around and putting that up instead of this, that might be considered. Right? Dimmesdale is prevented from finding redemption throughout the action of the novel by cowardice. We could say Dimmesdale's cowardice prevented him from finding redemption in the novel. I don't know if we would need the action of the novel. It would maybe depend on what else is in your paragraph. But remember that writing is about communication And to be a good communicator, you have to be very clear with your language. So we don't want people tripped up on our syntax and our like wordiness. We want them really to get our ideas and be as clear as possible. In fact, it's my thinking that when students have weak ideas, they write like this so that they're confusing to me so that I can't see that their ideas are weak. It's kind of this mask that we do. So you all have wonderful ideas and strong ideas. You don't need to hide it.